And so, my dear friends, before tonight's video begins, just a quick shout out for the Chilling app. April 22nd will mark the 1-year point since the Chilling app was officially launched. So I'm here to tell you about the Chilling 1-year anniversary giveaway. This includes a Samsung 70-inch Class 7 Series LED 4K UHD Smart TV, the Samsung 4.1 channel soundbar, and the limited edition Year 1 t-shirt. And of course, 2 first-place runners-up will receive a $100 gift card to Amazon and a limited edition Chilling Year 1 t-shirt. And 5 second-place runners-up will receive a $25 gift card to Amazon and that limited edition Chilling Year 1 t-shirt. The winner, of course, will be announced on or about May the 2nd, and you will find details at the link in the video description below. Also, that's where you need to go to enter. And of course, let me just remind you of some of the incredible features of the Chilling app. There are now classic novels, vintage horror radio, and true crime. And of course, there's the first of its kind ambient menu, so you can choose whether you listen to the stories in the pouring rain, or whatever takes your fancy. Now, of course, you have the ability to download for offline listening. We now have well over 800 stories, and that means hundreds of hours of content. From monsters, gore, to the paranormal, from thrillers to true stories. Of course, there's a wonderful sleep timer, so you can set it and drift off into those wonderful, wonderful nightmares. You get a free trial, don't forget that. And from then on, it's only $2.99 per month. And of course, the best thing, it's completely ad-free. So, check out the link in the video description below, and join me and many other wonderful narrators at the Chilling app. It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Nika's Shadow by MLycantrope. Every winter there's this thing that comes out of the lake and stalks my property. This is the 13th year this has happened. Every time it happens, I'm forced to stay indoors because I can't bear to hear its voice or to see its face. A face that it stole, a face that doesn't belong to it. This parody of a woman as it wanders around my property clad in swamp growth, screeching and moaning as it does. Somehow, it stole her face. Somehow it stole Nika's face. Nika and I met when we were kids. She was an orphan and my father had just passed away. We were both broken from a very young age. Looking back, I feel like she's the only person I ever loved besides my parents. We became fast friends, and by the time she was supposed to start her life as an adult, my mother had passed away too. I was so alone in this world, and so was Nika. Being familiar with the bottle already back then, I remember one night I offered her to come stay with me. I explained I had nobody besides her, and she laughed before her expression turned solemn again, noting that she didn't have anyone else besides me either. We moved in together, but not for long. Nika, who never knew a home or a family, couldn't stay too long in one place. She was a nomad, a flame without source or restraint. For all of her confidence and strength that she projected onto the world, she was lonely and hurt. I knew this much because, well, what we had was special. I could see it in her eyes. That's why I always let her go, because I always knew she'd come back, and she did. She'd disappear for a while, and then come back. Sometimes alone, sometimes with a man or a woman who she claimed to have feelings for. We both knew these were lies. She loved no one, truly. Well, she loved me, but it wasn't romantic. It was different. I've seen her break so many hearts, but she always professed to be concerned with only breaking mine. I kept telling her she could never do that, but that was a lie too. Yeah, she broke mine. Nika broke my heart the last time she came back. When she came back, she was different. Her skin was pale, her stature meek and gaunt. There wasn't much of her usual fiery self. She was cold, slow and fading. She never told me what had happened to her, but I knew she wouldn't last for long. I could see that in her eyes. Well, Nika always liked to drink. Besides me, that was her only other love. The last we'd lived together, though, she drunk like a horse. That's when I realized she wasn't making it out anymore. The same woman I've seen laugh through broken bones and torn organs, through hunger, through immense physical and emotional pain. She could beat all of that, but this time she wasn't beating the disease that ate at her. She never told me what it was, and I could never find the strength to make her tell me. She kept saying she'd be fine, but I knew she was lying. One night when we were about to go to sleep, as we lay in bed, she said she could see this black shadow standing there, looming over her, growing darker and colder with each passing day. She said she saw it pull out a thread from inside of her. A white little thread came out of her chest and into the shadow's mouth. Well, I thought she was being metaphorical about whatever she'd had, but she insisted on being literal, and we had a bit of an argument about it. I called her insane, and she laughed at me, calling me a psycho instead. She and I, we always had those minor arguments and disagreements. We didn't always see eye to eye, but these arguments, they ended with banter. I forgot about Nika's shadow, but couldn't unsee her deterioration. She withered away like a flower in the summer heat, becoming smaller, thinner. Her skin tightened around her body, becoming leathery. Those shining eyes of hers became sunken, while her cheekbones became more and more noticeable. Her strength was fading away. She spent days doing nothing but lying in bed. Sometimes she'd moan and cry weakly in her sleep. I couldn't do anything but watch, and it ate away at me. It gnawed at me at the point when I started drinking way too much. It got to the point I couldn't tell apart Nika's corpse-like appearance from my healthy-looking ideal of her. We spent days drinking and talking. I'd lie if I said I could remember what we talked about, or how long we spent like this, because I never remember anything from that period. I remember the taste of alcohol and misery in my mouth as I watched the only person I cared about being sucked out of this world by some sort of evil dressed in a man's shadow. Oh, I've seen the abomination, I've seen it once, and that was enough to burn it into my memory for all eternity. I woke up one night and found myself face to face with a pitch-black shadow standing over Nika, its pernicious shape connected to her broken form with a white little thread, a barely visible one. Well, I wanted to move, but I couldn't. My body was frozen in place. The thing must have noticed me as I saw a thick, pure white smile form on its dome. When I saw that sickening smile, the room turned frozen, and I felt a knife pierce my chest. It sucked the air out of my lungs as the sound of my heartbeat bombarded my ears. I was choking on the void in my throat as the shadow smile grew larger and larger. Panicked, I tried moving, but nothing came. My body wasn't in my control anymore. My skin turned to marble, the statue stuck in place for as long as the demonic kept its invisible eyes locked on me. It simply faded, finally allowing me to break out of its spell. Once I pulled myself away, a knot formed in my stomach. I let out a scream and ended up puking all over myself. Thankfully, I didn't wake Nika up. I remember her face, though, from that night. It seemed so comfortable, so calm. The morning after, I told her about the shadow. She looked at me like she'd seen a ghost before bursting out into pained laughter. She admitted that the shadow man was just a joke she'd pulled on me. And yet, I've seen it. I was adamant about knowing what I'd seen. Well, she wouldn't believe me, however, instead saying that she must have finally driven me mad like everyone else she came into contact with. She said I was losing it. Well, she wasn't entirely wrong. I was losing it. I was losing her. Not long after, I found her body in the bathtub, cold and still. And something inside of me broke. A sharp pain shot through my body as I watched her lifeless body floating in the water. It wasn't purely emotional. It was quite physical, this pain. I felt like I'd lost a part of my body. I couldn't move my gaze away. Her form transfixed me in place. Feeling the tears streaming down my face, I couldn't feel anything else. Nothing at all. It's like it threw me into a vacuum of emotions. Nothing came in, nothing went out. Nothing moved, nothing changed. Everything stayed motionless. Colorless. I remember little from that day or any day after that one for a long, long time. I don't know how long. All I know is that there was a lot of booze, a black hole inside, and the corpse of my beloved Nika laying in one room. My mind snapped. I was so lost and, not hurting, just lost and floating in absolute nothingness, not in a good way. Trapped inside my little bubble of pleasant memories and mimetic happiness with a person who was gone forever. The days bled into weeks, and those soon became months. It all flashed by me like a little spark. I didn't care. At that point, I didn't care about anything at all. I was too busy drowning myself in alcohol, hoping to feel something. No sensations came, however, and at one point even the alcohol started losing its burning edge, slowly turning into a hydrant rather than an intoxicant. She filled the house with the stench of decay, but I could barely register that. I was far too gone at this point. Didn't care about it. Nika's room became a horror show, her body slowly decomposing into a gooey puddle of brown and black material draped over a skeleton. I've been to that many times over the months. God, what haven't I done around those remains of hers? I prayed at her remains. I've cried on top of them, and I've spoken to them. Everything. I did it all. I was a madman who spoke to a decaying pile of bones and kept on crying just how much I loved them. Well, she was gone, but I couldn't let her body go even though not much had remained of it. I spent my days drinking and puking on myself or talking to the quickly disintegrating body. I spent my nights dreaming about drowning at the hands of Nika in the lake by the house. Soon enough, I fell in love with the thought of drowning in that frickin' lake. Whenever I thought about just throwing myself into the waters with a rock tied around my neck, I remember just how peaceful and how beautiful she looked in death. Her form was impeccable to behold as I watched her float in the bathtub, and in these moments of grim recollection, I felt myself feel something again. Thinking about my death, I found peace. Somewhere deep down inside, I was dreaming of reuniting with her on the other side. And eventually my intrusive thoughts became even more prevalent, and I opted for that one last step towards immortality. Life had become nothing but a painful, monotonous chore, fueled by alcohol and self-destruction. Life was no longer worth it. Even cutting myself and burning myself with cigarette butts did nothing. I wasn't living. Instead, I was just an animated sack of shit and chemicals. I needed a way out. I wanted to see her again. She was calling me to join her in my dreams, begging me to follow her into the realm of endless darkness where she was so lonely and cold. Finally had enough and took that one last step. Well, tried to, anyway. There was nobody left in this world whom I'd care for. Not that there's anyone to care about me. After all, I had no bridges left, as everyone I'd ever loved had died. I think it's funny today, as the awful thing outside calls out my name using Nika's voice, demanding I come out, demanding I set it free. I let her go. I did. She forced me to let her go. Nika terrorized me from beyond the realm of the dead to let her go. She forced me to untangle myself from her filthy remains, and I did. I ended up burning whatever was left of her. Took a while, but I did. Now this thing, Nika's shadow, Nika's demon, still pretending like I have a part of her with me. The only thing I have now is memories. As the prospect of my ending is funny to me now, so was the prospect of remaining alive was back then. I was ready to end it all there and then. I set the whole thing up and was about to throw myself into the lake, a boulder tied with a strap to my neck as I watched the calm waters below. And for a moment I got lost in the serene scenery, almost able to find a semblance of joy in my own pitiful existence. Before I could notice, though, dark clouds covered the sky, slowly casting a gloomy shade over the beautiful scenery. As I watched the winds rocking the waters in the lake below, forming waves, I could hear a voice. It called me faintly from below. It felt airless and watery. I felt the tears streaming down my eyes, and I was about to reunite with my beloved. But then I looked down again. The sensation of a sharp knife pierced both my lungs as a scream echoed through the blackened skies. I fell down backwards, clenching the boulder and shivering with fear and disgust. Another awful scream pierced my eardrums, louder than the last. The waters in the lake rose as the winds became violent, bashing against my body, making my skin shiver even more. What I'd seen down below made little sense. Even thinking about it makes me shudder to this day. A third scream pierced the air, coinciding with a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through my body. It was my name. Something down below had screamed my name. Something furious, something irrational, a thing that shouldn't exist. Something so terrible even I couldn't handle watching it. A thing from my worst nightmares. I've never been so afraid in my entire life as I was in those moments. The feelings were back, in the form of sheer terror. Untying the strap that tied my neck to the boulder, I left it there and ran as fast as I could back home. I locked the door and the windows before running to Nika's room. Well, this time the stench of her mostly decayed body was almost unbearable. Even then I remained right by her, huddled next to the gore and decay-stained bed on which I'd left her unburied remains. I spent the next 10 hours sitting on the floor, shaking in fear as images of that thing in the lake flashed themselves before my eyes repeatedly. I couldn't move, I couldn't think straight, I couldn't do anything as the panic slowly corrupted my mind. Inserting impossible images into my eyes, slowly burning away at what remained of my sanity. Eventually, my body gave out and I passed out. When I woke up, the stench of death was far worse than it had been prior to when I'd fallen asleep. It was truly hellish. I ran out of the room, only to slip on a puddle of water. The whole hallway was wet. There shouldn't have been any water. My head was spinning and I was groaning because of the pain pulsating in the back of my head. None of this made sense. I stumbled to the bathroom to wash my face and attempt to come back to my senses. The water in the bathtub was running, overflowing the tub, dripping onto the floor. I didn't turn it on. My heartbeat became rapid, my mind was going around itself in circles, nothing made sense. I heard a breathy sigh behind me, and chills ran down my spine as I turned around slowly. There she was, in the mirror, her face contorted into pure rage and hatred, a parody of a once beautiful woman who had become a ghastly monstrosity that threatened to devour me there and then. I fell down and averted my gaze for a second. Mustering up all the courage I still had in me, I looked at the mirror, and she was gone. The thing that was in the lake somehow had followed me home. Well, these were my first encounters with it, but they wouldn't be the last. Over the next few weeks, this thing became a fixture of my life, a permanent reminder of my worst wound, the one that could never heal. The thing that would appear behind me and whisper awful things in my ear. It would stand there in the mirror and windows. It would stare and accuse me with its ugly, soulless black eyes. Somehow it would mess with the water and electricity in the house. It would stand there and stare at my Nika every time I went into her room. It would stand over me at night and hiss. Every time I saw this thing, I felt myself losing a part of myself. It would just stand there and make me feel like I'd be losing a piece. And this is what Nika spoke of when she said that there's a shadow that's sucking her out of existence. Though for me, there was no white thread, no void. I had to watch as the darkness of oblivion had twisted my only friend into a sick, decaying, ghoulish parody of herself to torment and mock my loss, and me. I finally lost it with this thing when I went into Nika's room, and it was beyond cold. It was painfully cold inside, dropping to near freezing temperatures. I left the window open to ventilate out the stench of death. Kneeling down beside her remains, I stayed there for a few moments, in total silence, just remembering the good times with her. Something cracked audibly in the room. I'd allowed myself to become so lost in thought I didn't notice the source of this cracking. I was only pulled out of my memories by the sound of a gasping skeleton, as it awkwardly rose from the gore and decay-stained sheets, reaching out to me. I fell backward as my heartbeat became erratic. The room had gone suddenly even colder, and my body shook violently with fear as the skeletal remains of my dearly beloved pulled themselves up and crawled out towards me. I screamed and crawled away from the reanimated cadaver, but it followed me relentlessly. Too shocked to do anything, I kept on crawling until it grabbed a hold of my leg. At that point, I finally snapped. Whatever humanity remained in me died in that instant, and I just kicked the unliving hell out of this skeleton. Great happiness and terrible sadness overcame me at that moment. Somehow I found the strength and the will to get up and continuously beat on the perverted remains of what used to be Nika. I kept on beating and kicking those bones until I could do so no longer. Whatever took over the remains wouldn't get out either. In a moment of desperation, I made the hardest choice I'd ever had to make. With tears in my eyes and great pain weighing on my heart, I had to come to terms with my loss. I could no longer keep the one I loved by my side. Well, till death us do part, it said. For a good reason, it would seem. Dragging the unliving corpse of my beloved to the hearth, dousing the rotten, possessed bones in alcohol and throwing them into the fire. I couldn't watch as they burned, and I couldn't stand the sound of the inhuman cries that emanated from within the flames. I drank myself into oblivion that day to forget my misery, but I was never successful in escaping it. That day, after I'd passed out from overconsumption, I had the worst kind of nightmare. I was dragging my beloved Nika to the shower. She was kicking and screaming weakly, resisting my grasp, but to no avail. She was too weak to break free. I shoved her face into the sink and turned on the water. Crying, tears burning my face, and muffled gargles cutting my eardrums, I watched as my body was killing the one person I'd ever loved. When she finally stopped moving, I placed her lifeless body in the tub and filled it with warm water. I watched her reawaken before shoving her head under the hot water once more. And then, I woke up. It was dark and I was alone. Nika was gone, and with her, the shadow. I had a lot of mourning to do, but time partially heals all wounds. The days have become bearable as they turned into weeks and later into months. I was used to being alone, but the thought of being actually alone in this world always lingered in my mind. It still does. I still miss her every single day. Well, I know I'm alone, but that's the way I like it. Nika did indeed drive me mad, because I refused to replace her with anyone else. That being said, there's still something lusting after me out there. Every winter it comes back, wearing her form to torment me. I don't know what it is, but it's there, and as long as I'm inside, it can't reach me. I've learned that for the first time. I've seen it after cremating Nika. I've had that same terrible nightmare nearly a year after I encountered the undead. Waking up from it, drenched in a cold sweat, my heart still beating violently, I headed outside to cool off. I grabbed a smoke and my coat and went out. Finally, relaxing, I noticed someone walking around in the woods. I called out to them, remarking that few people visit this place. Once the person turned around to face me, my body tensed up and the shape filled my head with these ugly memories. Nika's twisted and perverted, dead face plastered to its head. A toothless grin ever so widening and sickening, pure white eyes contorted in pure hatred stared at me, wet black hair draped over its gaunt form. The thing noticed me and bolted right toward me. I saw it speeding in my direction, covering a great distance with each leap. Seeing its progression, I ran back inside, locking the door and the windows. I stood behind the door, waiting for it to make its move, but nothing came. It was dead silent, no banging or trying to break it. It was gone, seemingly. Well, it nearly gave me a heart attack while I passed the window. It just stood there, staring at me. Its ugly, ghoulish face trying to say something. I don't know what it wants, nor do I care to know. I guess this thing that killed Nika is real. It's after me. And while it's here every time I go out, it tries to reach me, but I always go back inside as it's seemingly unable to enter the house. I'll stay indoors for the week or two it shows up for. And after that, it disappears again until the next year. This is the 13th year Nika's shadow has been stalking me. A grim reminder of the things I've done, and the things I might have done but have purposefully erased from memory with copious amounts of alcohol. Monday, 11th July 2016. Dear Diary, I'm so glad I went to the dentist today. I've been delaying going for so long, and it turned out to be a great day, even though I was petrified. I always make a habit of being really early. It's a pet peeve of mine. An annoying one, but still. Moving on. I got a new diary today. I know people laugh at a man with a diary, but it keeps me occupied and it keeps my mind from thinking about how pathetic my life is. But moving on to the good news that happened today. I went to the dentist's and I met the most beautiful woman. It was amazing. The second I looked at her, I knew she was a fantastic person. She lit up every room she went in. We were waiting for around 15 minutes together. I originally was there for 20 minutes, but then she came in 5 minutes later and, oh my, she was amazing. The best part was there were so many other available seats, and she sat next to me, of all people. Because, in her words, I looked nice and friendly. I was so happy. The happiest I've been in a long time, in fact. She told me her name, which was Rosemary, but she told me to call her Rose. Oh, she's great like that. I told her my name was Darren, and she told me it was a great name. I found it amazing. No one has ever been this nice to me. We ended up talking about movies, politics, cute little animal videos on YouTube, and even sports. It was perfect. She was perfect. Unfortunately, she was eventually called into the dentist room by that prick of a dentist. If you don't realize, I also have some severe anger issues. I wish I didn't have them, but life goes on. I just thought I'd say my teeth are fine. Just need to floss more. But apart from that, everything's fine. But anyway, I digress. When Rose was about to head in, I knew I couldn't see her disappear out of my life just like that. I had to do something, so I quickly asked her for a number and asked if we could meet up again. She gave me her number. She told me to call her on Friday to go out to dinner. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe it. I was astounded. Can't wait for Friday. Friday, 15th of July, 2016. Dear Diary, today was amazing. I called Rose at 4 p.m. A bit desperate maybe, but I couldn't care less. Unfortunately, she rejected me. Apparently some prick of a boss was giving her a hard time at work, and she was just so annoyed by him, she didn't want to go out. If I knew where that prick lives, I'd go to his house, knock his door, and stab him repeatedly till he bleeds to death. A man should never treat a woman as beautiful and intelligent as her like that. But by the sounds of it, she'd had a rough day, and that's why she wasn't in the mood. I said okay, but I didn't want her to have a bad evening just because of that prick. That's why I decided to call her about, I don't know, another 33 times. She at last agreed to go out with me to a restaurant. I insisted on picking her up from her home address. She declined. I kept insisting, and she just told me flat out no. That hurt me a bit. So, we decided on just meeting outside a fancy restaurant called Barracuda Bar and Restaurant. That was fine by me, although I was a little disappointed I didn't get to go to her house and go inside her bedroom and force her down. No. I didn't mean that. I did not mean that. Although she is beautiful, and I can tell we hit it off. I love her. So, we met outside of it. Turns out we parked in the same car park, so that's convenient. She seemed excited to see me, and vice versa. The dinner was nice, and she told me I was funny. And that was great. When I saw her, she was as beautiful as I remembered. Stunning. As the dinner went on, though, she seemed to look worried by me. I don't know why. I suppose I was a bit forward. I kept telling her how beautiful she was every 5 minutes or so. But I'm not needy or creepy. I don't know where she got that idea from. That angered me a bit. We finished dinner, and I told her I'd pay, and she said her boss was making her work on Saturday, so she had to get up early. I'd love to kill him. She thanked me for paying, and she told me to call her again sometime. I couldn't wait to call her, so I waited till she drove out the parking lot, and I followed her home. I wrote down the address. It's here somewhere. Here it is. 49 Harrington Way. I also found out she works at Wellington Soliciting Firm. Plus, her boss is going to be there tomorrow, so I may be able to have a little chat with him after work about making Rose work on weekends. Anyways, better get some sleep. I've got a big day tomorrow. Saturday, 16th of July, 2016. Dear Diary, so I ended up talking to Rose's boss. He seemed to be quite understanding. Although, it's amazing how quickly he cooperated when I began stabbing him in the chest. You should have seen his fat face as I dug my knife into him. It was hilarious. Rose and all the other employees that prick made work on a Saturday left an hour before him, so no one would be the wiser. I hid the fat fuck in his trunk. After that bit of joy, I went to call Rose, only to find that she'd blocked my number. That really pissed me off. So, I decided to shrug it off and went to her house and put a note in her mailbox. I'll tell you the main highlights of the note. I first went on to explain the death of her boss, and how we could laugh about it over coffee on Sunday, if she wasn't doing anything. Then I go on for a bit about, well, I don't really know. It goes on for a bit, and I lastly go on to tell her to meet me under the bridge at Milford Street at 10 p.m. I arrived at 9:30 p.m. My pet peeve again. I stood there for about an hour until I left. I decided to go to the house. I arrived only to see a police car outside of it. This angered me a bit, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I don't know what she's playing at, though. I'm not going to give up yet, though. It must have been her boss that was causing her this stress. Now she'll be happier than ever before, especially with me in her life. Well, never mind all that. She's not at that stage of acceptance yet. Well, anyway, I couldn't hear her that well inside the house. So I waited in the bushes on the side of her house until I heard the front door open after 5 minutes of waiting. I tried to eavesdrop on their conversation. I heard her mention my letter to the 2 police officers. They said they could go and check under the Milford Street Bridge, but that was it. As for her prick of a boss, the police said they looked around the area and couldn't see any traces, apart from his car still in the parking lot. Never thought of lurking in the trunk. Police are such a bunch of morons these days. I was just about to leave, but I suddenly noticed in her backyard there was a pile of clothes and underwear, just laying there. Presumably hers. I thought to myself, it would be rude if I left without getting, I don't know, a memento. I don't think she'll be too bothered that I took a few items. Sunday, 17th of July, 2016. Dear Diary, I went to Kenny & Carl's hardware store on Castle Road, so I could pick up some essentials, just so our love could speed up to the point of us both accepting the relationship we're bound to have. I can't wait, Rose. I bought a hammer, a load of nails, boards of wood, some wire cutters, and I also had to get one of my knives sharpened so I can help the process along. The guy at the till just looked at me perplexed for making these purchases. I don't know why, I just want to show how much I love Rose. What's wrong with that? I stopped by at 5 p.m. to see if anything was happening over there. You know, just to check. I mean, it's not like I could afford for anyone to try and stop our love any more than those bastard police officers already have. Well, moving on, before I get even angrier. But never mind. I peeked into the house through the window, and I was able to view 2 people in their, I don't know, early 70s, who I later found out were her parents. going into her house. The window I used yesterday was still open, and I couldn't believe what they were saying. I overheard her thanking them for letting us stay in their house, so she doesn't keep getting harassed by this pervy creep, David, as she calls me in her words. I don't understand, Rose. Have I done something? What did I do? What did I do? So, I had to do the only thing I could think of doing. I waited until they left and went to follow her parents' car. I had to travel for an hour and found out their address was 22 Broughton Lane. I almost had a bit of a scare when I was about to run out of petrol, but it was fine. I made it there just in time. Monday, 18th of July, 2016. Dear Diary, I broke into Rose's parents' house last night. When Rose awoke, it was morning, and she was surprised to be at the top of the basement stairs. It wasn't all that bad, though. The light was on. I left a note on the step next to her, which Rose saw when she woke up. I looked up at her, and as she read on, she seemed terrified. This saddened me, as I just wanted her pretty little face to be happy. But I accepted it would take time for her to love me. I suppose I shouldn't have been so direct with her. I'll write down to you what it said on the letter. Dear Rosemary, I watched you sleep last night through the window. You're as beautiful as I remembered. You're such a lovely flower, Rose. I know it's corny, but oh well. I was slightly angered by you calling the police earlier, but this must be true love if I still want you. I tried your phone number, but it was blocked. You must have changed phones, I guess. But, yeah, this must be true love. You look amazing, especially when you're asleep. I know you've been reluctant in the past about us getting together, but I just couldn't look at you anymore, so I broke in and felt your skin. I knew it was meant to be. It was so soft. Oh, and the reason I boarded up the basement door was so we could be together. So don't be alarmed. It was just in case you decided to have another change of heart. Because eventually, you'll realize it'll be for the best if we become partners. We're meant to be together. I know this is a lot to take in, but trust me, our love is real. By the way, don't worry about anyone interfering with us. I already had that earlier this morning. People just keep trying to get between us. At about 7 in the morning, there was a knock at the door, and I heard your parents get up, with your mum coming in. She screamed so loudly, I had to silence her right then and there. A second later, your dad came in. He was more of a challenge. He nearly killed me. But I just managed to stab him before he could get a chance to finish me off. Luckily, I knocked him to the floor. So I stabbed him even more, and there is now a massive hole where his heart was. I can't believe how many people tried to get between us. Funny story. That person at the door was a police officer. It turns out he wasn't sent out here. He just wanted to check how you were getting on. So no one knows he was here. He ran into the house with a gun. Fortunately, I was hidden under the bed. After I heard him yelling into the house, saying he was going to shoot whoever was in there. I was amazed at how you didn't even bat an eyelid. You really are a deep sleeper. He looked into your room, and since I was under the bed, he thought I'd run into another room. He turned his back to see if I'd moved from my current location. That's when I jumped from under the bed and skinned the fat bastard alive. After that, I locked the front door, closed every curtain and every window, so no one would be able to look in or come into the house. I had to chop them up into little pieces and hide them under a sheet. Your parents were quite easy as they were old, slim and had weaker bones, so it was quite easy to cut them up, unlike that fat-ass policeman. It took hours to slice him up. An absolute fat prick. Every time I cut into him with my knife, the blood just squelched and sprayed all over me. I got the job done eventually, but as for the intestines, they wouldn't stay under the sheet. So annoyingly, I had to nail them to the ceiling. Just for precautionary reasons, in case of anyone finding out and trying to stop our love for each other. I love you, Rose, and I believe I've shown it by doing all of this just for you. As I said, I know this is a lot for you to take in, and I know you're going to be sad about losing your parents. So, I'll let you stay at the top of these steps as long as you want, if that's what it takes for you to get over your parents' deaths. Also, there's no way to escape through that door with all the wooden planks in the way, especially when I've taken all the tools and left them upstairs. We can finally be together, Rose. Just you and me. Just like we always wanted. I'm going to tell you that I will be cutting off the power to the house. Also, I'll tell you that I left all ways of communication upstairs, such as your phone and such. But the quicker you embrace our relationship, the quicker it'll all be over. I'll be at the bottom of the steps when you're ready, my beautiful Rose. Two really creepy tales there for your Friday evening's entertainment. Yeah, okay, well, that's it. Pretty long, hectic week for me this week, and it's finally over, and I'm very, very pleased. Been promising you more Operation Apple Tree on the Sunday evening for a couple of weeks now. Things have just been crazy, crazy busy, but I will definitely be getting back to it this coming Sunday. So if you've been following that series, yep, finally a bit more on its way. Well, that's more than enough for me for this week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Till the next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.